A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, a whole lot of stories were told. Seriously, it's hard to keep track of everything in the Star Wars universe. Through films, comic books, TV shows, novels, and much, much more, sorting out what is legend, what is canon, and which stories are told from a certain point of view can be a bit tough. We're here to help you sort through that mess and to stay up to date with what's going on in the galaxy. So sit tight, strap in, grab your favorite co-pilot if you want to, and get ready to make the jump to lightspeed. Ladies, gentlemen, Wookiees of all ages, these are the Holocron Chronicles. Hello there. Welcome to episode 18 of the Holocron Chronicles. I'm sticking with that little hello there thing. I think I tried it with Chloe a couple weeks ago, and I think I'm going to stick with it. So my name's Mark, aka the Canardian. I'm joined, as always, by my trusty co-pilot, Charlie Carden. Charlie, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, man. Midweek, having a lot of podcasting action, wearing my official swag. It's a good night.
Excellent. It seems like every time we podcast, you have like 2 or 3 different shows lined up on the same day. Like there's 7 days a week, dude. Pick a different day. Like
I would love to, but it's just things just all seem to kind of crash together. So yeah, I've had a couple weeks in a row that I'm on 3 shows for our network. I'm on Secret Friends Classic, as it were. I'm on this show, and then I host a show about Star Trek called Code 47. And I had a day last week where I did them all in a row. Or 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, yeah. Wild.
You know what? I follow where the river leads me. What can I say?
Crazy. It just might be. I'm running on less than 3 hours of sleep, so it might be that talking. But that sounds exhausting. That just I don't know. I'm gonna try to keep it.
I believe it was that day, but you know what? Cheap Canadian whiskey helps a lot. So thank you for that.
It definitely does. I think if I had whiskey right now, I'd be snoring into the mic. But you've been hearing a couple of chuckles. We are joined by a very special guest. I'm super excited to welcome Star Wars Infinite to the show. Infinite, how you doing tonight?
I'm pretty good. Really glad to be here. Just appreciate the opportunity, especially like as a new channel. So appreciate it a lot.
Absolutely, man. I've been following your stuff for a while. So I think you popped up pretty close, close to when you launched on my Twitter, because it's a lot of Star Wars stuff. So it's great to see new people on Star Wars Twitter. Why don't we jump right into it? Let's introduce you and your channel and a little bit of your Star Wars origin.
Yeah. So I'm Star Wars Infinite. So I just started my own channel. I think it was about maybe a month, three and a half weeks ago or something like that. So almost a month. You can find me on Twitter at SW Infinite with 2 E's. I also have my own YouTube at Star Wars Infinite and also my Spotify podcast. But I guess Star Wars origin story is so I just became a fan this March in 2021. So I'm very I'm like a pretty much a
super
baby.
Newbie.
Yeah, super newbie.
Wow.
Yeah, and since then, I'll just say I went on a pretty long binge of a lot of shows: Clone Wars, Mandalorian. I didn't get much sleep because that's really the only time I have to watch these shows. So I would stay up all night to 2 or 3 a.m. just binging. And actually, this March through April was the first time I saw all 9 movies, including Solo and Rogue One,
all right,
and things like that. So since March, I've just become obsessed with Star Wars. I have my own shirt, Clone Wars shirt here. So,
awesome.
It's kind of it's been a journey, but I don't know what else to say. I love Star Wars, and
What did you randomly happen upon something of Star Wars and just start watching? Did you get Disney Plus and say, I've been meaning to check these out for the last 20 years. Maybe
Yeah,
I should check something. Like
Right.
what was your starting point? Did you start with
yeah,
the shows or a movie, or
yeah,
how did
yeah.
this all come about?
So I actually started with Battlefront 2. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, yeah. So
Love Battlefront 2. I've
yeah,
watched that cut. For me, because I'm not a gamer, I've watched that cutscene movie maybe 2 or 3 times because
yeah,
it is this great 2.5 hour story that I feel is very
yeah,
complete. So that is
mhm,
awesome. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah. No, it's one of the best games I've played. But I started with that because my friend, um, he was just looking for someone else to play with, and he told me it was like, I think it was like $14 on the PlayStation Store at the time.
There's been
Yeah,
some
so it was really
pretty
cheap.
intense sales, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And at the time, I wasn't really into Star Wars, but I was like, I'm looking for a new game to play too. So I downloaded it, and I was playing it, and the first character I chose was Darth Maul. And although I was familiar with Star Wars when I grew up, um, I wasn't really familiar with the prequels, so I didn't know who Maul was or how he looked like. So when I saw him in Battlefront 2, I was like, damn, this guy's really cool. He looks really cool. And then I remember
Right.
during the game, like all these characters were saying emotes, and like everyone was like kind of talking to each other with these emotes, and I didn't understand it at all. So I was like, yeah, maybe I should just check out Star Wars. Um, so I started with the OTs, and then the prequels, and then and then the sequels, and so yeah,
Okay.
that's kind of like my starting point.
I love it. That's awesome.
Good,
That's
good place to start. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Palpatine said kind of a similar thing. Like his favorite thing in Star Wars is Battlefront 2. So it's really curious as longtime fans, like Charlie and I have been. Like basically, I said a few episodes ago, I was basically born with like a Darth Vader toothbrush in my house. Like it was just always there, right? So it's really interesting to me as a host of a video game podcast as well, to see people coming into Star Wars through video games. It's something like I've always played the Star Wars video games, whether it's Super Star Wars on the Super Nintendo or Shadows of the Empire on N64. Like Star Wars video games to me are like always amazing, but for that to be like your first jumping in point, that's kind of awesome. I love
Yeah,
those two worlds combining. So
yeah,
that's really cool.
That's wild. That's the first time I think I've ever heard of that. If anybody not having the kind of the intimacy, as it were, with
Mhm.
Star Wars that so many of us of our generation do, but yeah, saying something about a video game that's very uncommon source. So I think that's pretty awesome.
yeah,
For sure. So, all right, you've gotten in to Star Wars through this video game. You've binged all the movies, all this kind of stuff. You've watched the shows. At what point did you realize like I want to create content about this stuff? Because there's like I think different levels. Most people just kind of watch something and then they kind of let it go.
hmm,
Right now I'm rewatching Ted Lasso. I'm ready to jump into season 2. I love that show, but I don't think I'm going to start a podcast or a YouTube channel about it. So what was the point for you
yeah.
to be like, I need to start talking about Star Wars. I need to start a Twitter account that's dedicated to Star Wars.
Yeah.
What was that click for you?
It's a really good question. So I guess the point for me was after the Clone Wars, after I finished the TV series, um, and immediately after that, I also got a book called the Star Wars Archives, episodes 4 through 6, and it was like $20. So I recommend getting that book for any Star Wars fan. But after the Clone Wars and after reading a bit of that book, um, I was just kind of like, this to me is one of the greatest sagas, and whether it's film and the Clone Wars being a TV show, just one of the greatest pieces of media I've ever witnessed. Not just because it's really cool. You have big ships. It's a space opera and cool light sabers. Stuff like that. Um, but I think the story of uh, at least something that I struggle with every day, and I think all humans struggle with every day, is like fighting our dark sides. The dark side that we all have within ourselves, and I think Star Wars beautifully, you know, uh, goes over that struggle that we all have. And so for me, after watching the Clone Wars and going more into in depth of how um, just how things basically collapse, especially for Anakin turning into Darth Vader and seeing the clones and their sacrifice, and the last episode like killed me, um, and stuff like that.
Yep.
To me, that was when I was like, man, I love this. I love this thing, and I want to express my thoughts on it because I can relate with it so much, and I know a bunch of other Star Wars fans feel the same. Um, so yeah, and if I could add one more thing, in the archives book, uh, George kind of talked about why he created Star Wars, and one reason was because he felt like people like they in our society they always argue, I'm right about whether it's my religion, I'm right about my political beliefs, I'm right. People kind of divide themselves up, but with Star Wars, everyone can kind of relate to it and not really argue. Like we all have our good sides and our dark sides, and I think
Mhm.
most of us do believe in a force. Whether I know there are people who don't believe like in anything, but to me personally, I think most people do believe in something out there. So when they see something like the force, I think it's very relatable to a lot of people, um, more so than kind of the real world stuff that we talk about, whether it's religion or politics and stuff, right? Um,
Mhm.
so I thought that was brilliant, and so that's why I kind of called my channel in Star Wars Infinite, because just the values and the teachings I think are forever. So yeah,
That's awesome. I love the origin story
Totally.
of even your name.
Love it.
It's well thought out.
yeah,
Yeah,
That's
right.
fantastic.
Totally.
Yeah. So let's from there, I guess, jump right in. You've been caught up since March. I still can't believe like you've dove in
I
this much.
I still got to
never
finish Rebels though. I still got to finish
Okay.
Rebels. Yeah, I'm a
All
season
right.
two for that. So yeah,
All
right,
right.
right, right.
So you all caught up on Bad Batch.
yeah.
All right, perfect. How have you been enjoying Bad Batch without going into Rebels? Because there are some stuff that ties in there that, as a Rebels fan, I'm like, oh, I know that.
Yeah.
Have you been enjoying it so far?
Yeah, I'm still enjoying it. So Rebels, I'm only like midway through season two. Um,
Okay.
although I know many spoilers, like Twilight of the Apprentice and some of the duels that we'll see in the future, but
All right.
I'm still only in the middle of season two, um, and I'm still enjoying it. Like I've already come across like Gregor and Wolf again in Rebels and stuff like that. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, there's some parts where I like, what's what, but a lot of stuff does also relate to like the Clone Wars. Um, so
Hmm.
for me, it hasn't been too burdensome or difficult. Um, it's not like where I don't need to watch it. I need got to finish the other shows. So it's been great so far.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's start recapping. We've got episode 13, Infested. Charlie, you want to start
Yes,
with a little
absolutely.
recap of this episode?
So this jumps back in. The gang is coming off of the two-part saga on Ryloth with a young Hera, and Sham Syndulla, her the family that ties right back into Rebels, which obviously you're right in the middle of, my infinite friend, and they're getting back home and they're finding out that Sid Rhea Perlman has been disposed from her spot by another local ne'er do well who has ties to the famous Pike Syndicate, which we've seen in other portions of Star Wars. What's involved here is that they're going to have to steal some spice in order to find a way to get Sid back in good graces. And to be perfectly honest with you, this episode for me dwindles really quickly into filler territory. This really felt like a bridge to fill something up until we got into what I think in episode 14 is a fairly significant story uh, for the run. So yeah, I didn't. I tell you what, I didn't grab a whole lot out of this. It was a little micro heist story. Didn't really feel like the stakes were super high. So it was not. I would not say it was one of my favorites so far. That's my take.
Yep. Infinite. What did you think?
Um, I pretty much agree. For me, it wasn't. I don't like to. Well, I don't like to use the word filler too much, but to me, it did seem like filler. Um, it is cool that they brought up the Pike syndicates. At least for me, like whenever I think about the crime syndicates, I think of Maul, um, and what he did with the Crimson Dawn and stuff like that. So I wonder, if they'll plug him back in somehow, and that's why they brought the Pikes into the episode. Um, but who knows? I don't know if that would be this season or if that would be season two. But um, it was kind of I will say boring episode for me. Like you said, it was kind of there on filler, but um, yeah, I mean, they always have these episodes for a reason. Even if we think that it's a filler, there's something to it. So I'm just not seeing it though right now.
That's exactly how I felt. And I think Dave Filoni just last week or the week before just came out with a quote of, "I hate the word filler." Pretty much exactly what you said. There's always something in one of these episodes that ties to something later, and when you're watching it, you can't see the big picture, so you just have to remember. And then later on, you're going to be like, "Oh, that's how that ties in." So whether it's been something like we've talked about, where this stuff maybe ties into the Mandalorian or the Book of Boba Fett, or it ties into season 2 of Bad Batch, or whatever it is. It could even tie into a few episodes from now. That I have faith that this is going somewhere, but I don't quite know where it is going. And it was just kind of one of those episodes where you're like, oh, I hope this stuff pays off, because right now it's just kind of yeah, like you said, I don't want to say filler, but it felt fillery
Yeah.
without that larger context. So hey, we'll see how this pays off later. But Charlie, you mentioned the next episode was a lot better. Why don't you give us a
Yeah,
breakdown of that one?
absolutely. So episode 14 is called War Mantle, and you're starting to get a little deeper dive into what is happening in the greater galaxy as a whole, outside of our little 5-pack plus a kid running around. Is that the Empire is starting to transition away from the clones. From the Camino and kind of their production of the clones, and how that all factors in. Because our gang gets a call from Rex, noting that a friend of his, CC 5576 Gregor, which ties again right back to Rebels. And it's funny, I know Rebels, I know Gregor more as a character from Rebels than I do from the Clone Wars. It's like I can't even necessarily place a storyline within the Clone Wars that I can think of Gregor being a part of. But that's not important. But at any rate, Gregor is what was attempting to break out of an Imperial training facility, and he failed. He was obviously able to get get a call out. He is at a facility called War Mantle, which I didn't. It sounded familiar, but I didn't peg it until it says right here in this article that is a code name mentioned in Rogue One when Jyn is going through the different coded projects, trying to find. Was it? Oh my God, what the hell was her name? Stardust. Stardust was the name of the Death Star plans that they finally turned up. So, so basically he's stuck at this facility. He needs to be rescued. And so Rex sends them in to do exactly that. So they do, of course, get him out. But in doing so, obviously, they discover that the Empire is tilting more towards a human, basically military force. So you're seeing the overall look of everything tilting more towards a stormtrooper-ish kind of look, as opposed to from a clone look. But really, the same. It's different, but really kind of the same. But still, you're getting a little bit more vibe that things are tilted in that direction. So again, it's the same thing. And it says it right here. The structure feels redundant. The squad encounters a problem. Hunter is reluctant to get involved, but Omega convinces him. The squad goes on an adventure. Omega saves one of them, and then so on and so forth. But at the end of this, we at the very least get a little bit of excitement in a cliffhanger where Hunter is not able to escape. He's captured, and then you see, and I just rewatched this again this afternoon, he is then confronted by Crosshair, who is, of course, the member of their band who did not defect and go out on their own at the beginning of the series. So you're dealing kind of with that, and you're also dealing with it back on Camino. The Empire is starting to kind of squeeze down on the operation and shut it down altogether. So things are going through some serious transition time.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it felt good, particularly after an episode that just didn't really inspire much interest. to get something that really moves the plot forward. And again, we are down to the last. I'm going to say either 2 or 4 episodes. I think we have a
Like a
16 episode
16
arc.
run, so this is four. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's two left.
yeah. So in our next episode, we'll be breaking down
Wrapping it
the
up.
season/series finale. Don't really know if the show is going to be ongoing, but as we've talked about in the past, I feel like to keep drilling this down is probably not something that's going to happen. But I hadn't heard any differently, so I would expect by the time we get to the final episode, we will know one way or the other if it's going to be ongoing.
Infinite, what did you think of this one?
Yeah, I thought it was a really good like bounce back episode from the last one. I think for me, I was really happy that they kind of brought back the Kaminoans back into the fold, because the past few episodes before I was kind of questioning, well, what's going on with them, because I know they talked about earlier on in the season to bring up like the new phase of clone troopers or something like that. So I just had a bunch of questions about what's going on with them. Um, and one thing that I saw on Twitter, actually, I forgot who said it. So if you're out there and you're watching this, credit yourself. They said that Nala Se and Dr. Pershing's from the Mandalorian, they're like they're very similar in that they like really care about their, creations. Dr. Pershing with Grogu and Nala Se with the clones, because in this episode she was trying to, if I remember correctly, trying to get them away from Camino, trying to get them out, something I think. So they care about their creations a lot, and I guess maybe the Empire wants to use Nala Se for more of their cloning like stuff afterwards. And it seems like Lama Su is kind of toast. From the end of the episode, it seems like that. But I thought that was really cool just to see what was going on with the Kaminoans, and that parallel between Pershings and Nala Se was really cool to see. And yeah, and I'm curious to see what Crosshair will do with Hunter in the next episodes, especially in the series finale. Because I don't know, is he still affected like by his chip, or is he just kind of going on his own?
Yeah,
I don't.
and that does make me wonder if the chip was like kill all the Jedi, and then if that mission was essentially established as accomplished, is it then like, well, everyone who promotes disorder is also our enemy? So was that the is it the question is that the overall, is Order 66 not just kill all the Jedi, but is it eliminate all resistance?
Good soldiers follow orders.
Good soldiers follow orders. So exactly what exactly does that boil down to? So
Yeah.
that's a good question, because again, the Jedi have after that first episode, and we saw Master Dipa Balaba dispatch, we saw the young Kanan Jarrus escape, and then we haven't really had any other touches of the Jedi. So the overall crux of Order 66 is whatever orders are issued, that's what they're going to follow. And so if their orders are to then, as we saw in a few episodes going back here, to crush resistance, that's, and like Saw Gerrera's partisans, that came up in an early episode of this, and Crosshairs wanted to follow through, and some of the newer human recruit stormtroopers didn't think that it was a worthwhile mission, but Crosshairs is really a diehard. So how is he going to transition that into revisiting that justice again onto his former cohort? So we will find out about that, obviously, at the end of this week when that airs, and then we'll be back in 2 weeks to talk about wrapping up the series as a whole.
Yeah. I thought this episode finally felt like there was going to be some stakes. Now, we didn't get anything incredibly severe. I kind of honestly thought that someone was going to die in this episode. Like you said, we have 2 more left, and we haven't seen most of these characters, really any of these characters, show up later. We've run into people that we've seen in Rebels, and being able to tie this story in. But aside, like for the Bad Batch, the core Bad Batch, I really think that we might see them in the Book of Boba Fett. Like I said before, I'm hoping that there's a live action Omega shows up in that show. That would be awesome. But I'm expecting maybe one of the Bad Batch to be still with her at that point, and if that. So I really thought Hunter was going to die, or someone was going to die during this crazy mission, and not seeing that yet, but it feels like the stakes are a bit heavier at the end of this episode. So
Yeah.
I kind of
Right.
like where they're going with it, and Infinite, like you said, the tying in the stuff with the clones, you're starting to see that bigger picture of it, tying into the Mandalorian with the cloning stuff, tying into I don't know if you guys saw, StarWars.com just released this inside intel bit of Palpatine's contingency plan this
Hmm.
week.
Ooh.
So that was a really interesting read, and they talked about cloning in that. And they talked about how his consciousness was transported to Exegol, and the clone that they had couldn't handle how powerful he was after he was thrown into the reactor and everything.
Yeah.
Uh, so in Return of the Jedi, and how they had other clones, and how Snoke was created, and how Rey's father was created, and all this kind of stuff. And there was no clone or host powerful enough until Rey. It gets into all of this stuff that they've been
Hmm.
either hinting at or whatever. They even made fun of themselves in it, where they say, I think they started off, Poe Dameron might not have understood how Palpatine returned and was understandably exasperated at the news. Like
Yeah.
they're
Right.
making,
Right.
they're kind of poking fun at the delivery of that line. Like,
Yeah.
somehow Palpatine's returned. I don't know.
I don't
What do
know.
you want me
Yeah.
to
Right.
say?
Right. Yeah. No. I've got this article up right here, and again, it touches very heavily on Battlefront 2, which
Mhm.
was that
Yeah.
great story. So,
Yeah.
yeah, crazy.
Yeah, really, really great article. But
Mhm.
you're starting to see again all of this stuff tie into the broader Star Wars universe, with cloning, and with the rebels, and the transition from clone troopers to military, and how that happened. And that's been a really interesting development, because we know by episode 4 most of the clones are gone out of the army. There's still some around,
Right.
but they're intermingled between stormtroopers. And
Yeah.
to me, it's been interesting to see this whole time how much the chips are affecting different clones.
Hmm.
How strong some of them are. Just instant good soldiers follow orders, others fight it, others it doesn't affect at all. And it's so interesting for me just to see that. So uh, they've got some a lot of wrapping up to do if we're not getting a season 2. So you have to almost
Yeah.
Right.
imagine that maybe there's going to be a season 2. But if
Yeah.
if this is the end, there's a lot of stuff to tie up in the next 2 episodes. So I'm going to be very
Right.
curious to see.
No, I totally agree. And hopefully, if not, if this as a focus doesn't go forward, if you simply create perhaps different avenues that different characters can travel, then like you said, they can transition into other projects, again further reinforcing the little bit more of a cohesive storytelling. So
Hmm.
yeah, I look forward to seeing that as well. Most
Yeah.
Absolutely.
def.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Just go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. I was just gonna add one more thing. I was just gonna say I feel like if there's not, like you said, if there's not a season 2, there would be a bunch of things to wrap up in the last 2 episodes. Um, and to me, I don't know if you guys watched Game of Thrones, all 8 seasons, but uh, they rushed the last season, at least in my opinion.
Right.
Um,
Mhm.
True.
and I feel like if they really are just gonna stick with just the one season, I feel like they're gonna have to rush these last 2 episodes, and like you said, pack a lot of stuff in there. And I'm just not sure if that's uh, the best way to do it. But you gotta trust whatever Filoni and the
Yeah.
rest of the team does, right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
You're almost expecting like they finish this season, and it's somehow all the Bad Batch died.
hmm,
Okay, so anyway, yeah,
yeah,
Right.
like
Right.
very Loki-esque. Like,
yeah,
Oh
yes,
my.
very
Yeah.
sad.
Right.
Anyway,
And yeah,
yeah,
moving on.
uh, you mentioned something at the start of the show that play. You said the first person you played was Darth Maul. We've mentioned, you mentioned going to that dark side, uh, at being relatable as a struggle against the dark side and that kind of stuff. So moving away from the Bad Batch, the last thing I want to just touch on a little bit today is something we haven't talked about on this show. We've talked a ton about Jedi. We talked a ton about lightsabers and the galaxy and where we want the movies to go, but we've never talked about how badass the villains are in Star Wars. We touched on a little bit with Fem Ren and how the best villains are kind of relatable, especially when it came to Kylo Ren and how she kind of really gravitated towards that character. Um, but there's just something about some badass villains in Star Wars. So I just kind of want to ask you guys, what are some of your favorite Star Wars villain? This can be like relatability or just like is a badass dude in black swinging a red lightsaber. Let's go. You know, so Infinite, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah.
Seeing Darth Maul for the first time in a video game, what were your thoughts? Obviously, you kind of got a little hooked and interested there.
Yeah.
What do you think when you first saw him in a film like live action?
Yeah. Well, when I saw him in Phantom Menace, was the first time I saw him in the film. Um, I just loved his lightsaber, like his dueling style, and he was fighting both Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon at the same time. So you have one of the greatest Jedi masters, and then you also have just someone who will become one of the greatest Jedi masters, right? And he was dueling them both using his crazy acrobatics and um, especially coming from because right before that I watched the original trilogies, right? And so the dueling in that it was a lot more basic, two hands on the lightsaber hilt. It was still fun to watch, right? But seeing that in the Phantom Menace, the acrobatics and stuff like that. Um, but I think it was Ray Park who played him, right?
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, that was just really cool. And so that, and then obviously in Battlefront 2, he does that little spin move that's like really hard to control. Like my eyes get like all blurry when I do that. I still love using him. But like I just got so like caught up into just how he fought and also like his robes, um, his apprentice robes, and um, also how he looked in the Clone Wars by the end of season 7, and the hallway scene.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, it's just
So
iconic.
awesome.
I love Maul. I mean, he is the reason why I got into Star Wars. So, um, he holds a special place in my heart for sure.
Definitely. Definitely. Charlie, as the classic Star Wars fan,
You know,
what are some of your favorite villains?
I'm going to go in a different direction with this, and maybe this has to do with a character that I've kind of adopted to cosplay. But stepping away from your classical, the Emperor, Darth Vader, I like as a fully corruptible, unpowered human being. I like Director Krennic from Rogue One. Here's a guy who you can tell, and if you've done any of the background reading, there was a Rogue One novel that I read, and then obviously you see him in the film. This guy was a Republic officer who clearly had a lust for power, but within the crumbling infrastructure of the Republic, he was able to rise higher and higher and assume, get more of his fingers in dirty little pies, as it were, and to assume control of more projects and to assume control of different things, develop a little bit of a power base. And then when the Republic came to an end, he was then very easily transitioned that into the Imperial Security Bureau, which was clearly his passion, and then to further moving forward into creating this ultimate planet-destroying weapon, which would ensure the safety and stability of the new empire, which is, just an ultimate weapon of terror that he justifies as like, when he goes to take Jyn Erso's Galen Erso, when he finally tracks him down after all these many years, and we need you to come back. We got to finish the project, and he's like, I don't want to do that. It's a weapon of mass destruction. He says, you don't want peace, you want terror, and he says, well, you got to start somewhere. It's like, so here's a guy who's just absolutely corruptible. He loves power for power's sake. Will do anything, step over anyone, shoot a child, shoot an unarmed, shoot a barely armed woman. Okay, she shot him too. So he had he was in a bad situation with Lyra Erso, and I get that, but it's just basically a real bad bloke. He was a bad guy, and ultimately you did see him, much like all the other characters in Rogue One, kind of be dealt their final blow. But for me, he was something that exemplifies pulling the supernatural aspect out of it with the Sith and Rogue Jedi and whatever, but pulling that element out, you get a villain that is a little too close to the surface with what potentially we might see in a military dictator in present times, or a corrupt
Mm.
leader of the United States, for example, in present times, or times that have gone by, thank God. But just a very disturbing parallel to how absolute power corrupts absolutely for its own sake. So I always found him to be a great villain in that way.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I didn't think I'd go in this direction, but I have to give a shout out in a similar vein to Thrawn.
Mm.
I love that kind of two steps ahead, uh, thoughtful villain kind of thing, where it's like you said, Charlie. It's not he's not a super powered individual. He's the same reason that I loved Zemo as an adversary in Civil War. If you're not an MCU fan, that's basically just a regular dude that can take down these super powered individuals by either being 10 steps ahead of them, or by pitting them against each other, or by seeing the bigger picture, not because he's omnipotent or has some sort of tie into a power,
Right,
but
right.
just because he's that much of a tactical genius. So that's why I love, and just how cutthroat Thrawn is.
Yeah.
I think I'm excited for his return. Let's
Right.
say
See, and that's a great parallel with Zemo, because you look at the character, and again, I'm a Marvel Comics aficionado going back decades, and Zemo is a character, and I've read the majority of the Avengers comics, and a lot of Captain America, older Captain America comics, so I'm very familiar. And again, back in that parlance of the 60s and the 70s, he's very cookie cutter with the curses, you're gonna burr,
yeah.
burr, 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 burr. But when you see him as portrayed in the film, you're right, he's a tactician,
Mhm.
and he plays upon emotions, and again, he's always thinking of contingencies and finding ways to turn allies into enemies. And an empire that crumbles, an empire defeated can rise again, but an empire that crumbles from within, that's truly dead. That was, to paraphrase his line from Civil War. So yeah, you're right. Thrawn is not only that tactician, but as you see in hand-to-hand combat, he's a warrior as well. And as you read some of his backstory as portrayed in the comics, which are canon within the Marvel parlance, he came up raw. I believe he was some kind of an alien slave who earned his commission in the Imperial Navy and fought his way all the way up to what he became. So yeah, very, very deadly. But again, not a supernatural being, although of course, he was an alien as opposed to Krennic, who is just a regular Coruscant, dickwad. But again, I find that in a lot of ways to be more compelling than a villain who twists his mustache or
Mhm.
flashes his red lightsaber,
Mhm.
because they're just as sinister, but they don't exude power with the fist. They exude power with the mind and with their actions.
Yeah.
That being said, give me some badass in a cool costume that's swinging around a red lightsaber like any day. Like I absolutely, growing up, absolutely loved Darth Vader as just this menacing, like, take Batman but make him bad and give him a laser sword. Like
Mhm.
that kind of, like, that the cape, the black outfit, like just such a badass character. And I loved what they did with Kylo Ren, where he had that kind of cool mask and the cool, like, the hood and the cloak and everything else. Love the character design. Same thing with Maul, even though he wasn't
Yeah.
wearing a mask, but the spikes and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, Star Wars just nails the character design of these villains. And it's like, you see the Jedi and it's like, okay, cool, you're a space wizard priest with a, like, blue light sword, and it's
Right,
like, man,
right.
I like the Jedi better than the Sith, because I tend to like people who like good
Good
stuff and who
people.
do
Yeah.
good. but
Right.
but like, character design wise, you just cannot beat the villains in Star Wars. Like, come on, whether it's a bounty
Yeah.
hunter, like, how iconic does the character design have to be when you see Boba Fett for like 4 seconds and it instantly does like 40 years of fandom, and eventually we finally get a show kind of built around this kind of thing. But like, that armor was just so badass, and you see it for
Yeah.
like, it's literally like 10 seconds on screen, and
Yeah.
it's so good, so good.
Ma- Makes the mark.
And
You got it.
I wanted to give a quick shout out to Count Dooku too, because he's also
Yeah.
become one of my favorite characters. And after reading the book, Dooku Jedi Lost, I've just
Mhm.
gained such an appreciation for him. And I feel like he's so underrated because he really is one of the most powerful and most badass characters in all of Star Wars. I mean, he was able to take on uh, Anakin and Obi Wan. Of course, in Revenge of the Sith, he ended up dying, but before that, he was able to take them on, and um, from
And
the book
Yoda.
and Yoda, yeah, exactly.
I
Uh,
mean,
you know,
he took off, but still, like, he was able to
yeah,
hold his own against Yoda enough
yeah,
that he was able to get away. Like,
hmm yeah.
badass.
And in the Clone Wars, if you remember, he was fighting in his pajamas. I remember seeing that, and I was like, "Oh, that's why in Battlefront 2 he has a pajama skin, right?" And I was just like, "Oh my god, this guy is just, just amazing." Like, that was so cool. Like he's amazing too. But, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No
They've
doubt.
they've definitely nailed some of, like, like I said, the iconic villain kind of thing. So to you guys, I think maybe we'll start wrapping up. What makes an iconic villain iconic? Is it like the design, or is it the relatability? What's the one kind of thing that you guys look for in an iconic villain?
You know, I
Infinite.
would for sure.
Or, yeah,
I'm sorry.
Joe.
Go ahead, please. No, no, go ahead.
Okay. Um, that's a really good question. I as much as I love Darth Maul, um, I really appreciate like relatability. So characters like Count Dooku, I mean, and also Vader, those two really had struggles, obviously, with their light side and the dark side, and they were once good, they were once very good and very great people who wanted to fight for good, and they had good ideals, um, but obviously they became corrupted. Um, I'm not saying I look up to them because I don't. I'm trying not to become corrupted. So I want to be like Obi-Wan, Um, but the fact that they have so much struggle with their dark sides, I just really appreciate that because it adds a lot of depth to the characters. Because with someone like Maul, yes, he has a very cool design. Yes, he has a very cool fighting style. But I do think he lacks a little bit of depth as compared to those other characters that I mentioned. He's just filled with hate and rage, and that's really cool. But um, there's something really appealing to just relatability um, with some of these dark side villains and just villains in general, kind of like the
Mhm.
Joker in DC um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and things like that. So yeah.
Excellent, Charlie.
True. You know, in a lot of ways, some similarities. You know, we talk about Thrawn, we talk about Director Krennic, and those who, you know, in the case of Thrawn, it was, you know, he came from nothing. He got a taste of power. He loves pulling the strings. He's a lot like Zemo. I like that because he's very tactical. But in a lot of ways, you know, I admire in some ways, what a sloppy villain Krennic is, because look how easily a band of, you know, dipshits was able to break into his crazy military installation and steal this big ridiculous disc, and in the end of it he still gets greased. So, you know, his ego, his hubris is sky high, and that's what ultimately defeats most evil. You know, so that's when you really see things kind of come full circle. So I admire the lust for power, but I also admire the human aspect of always underestimating your nemesis. So I like that. That's the design I like. That's the relatability part, because that's how we see villainy in real life.
Yeah.
Just reminds me of the Incredibles. You almost caught me monologuing. If any other Disney fans or Pixar fans listening, that's it, and it was such a trope that, like, it's either monologuing or hubris or whatever, that they just don't see the hero coming to save the day because they're so caught up in their own thing. For me, I completely agree with the relatability kind of aspect, and I think that makes for a much more interesting villain. Um, but I can also just appreciate, like, a one-dimensional villain at times, that, as long as, again, and I'll go back to the character design, as long as that person or thing is so imposing that as soon as you see it on screen, you go, "Oh shit." Things are about to get bad. And to me, there's nobody better at that than Darth Vader. You see his lightsaber light up in a hallway, and you know some people are about to get yeeted to the afterlife. Like, it is just bad news. And watching in the prequels, watching Anakin turn to that bad side, even without the imposing armor. I thought Hayden Christensen did a great job of channeling that anger, and you realize that even without the armor, Darth Vader's still that imposing badass. And for me, you just like it's the presence. And it doesn't matter if I can relate or whatever, but it's that villain presence and
Yeah.
that badass presence, and that to me is something that again, whether it's just the cool, calm presence of a bounty hunter, or the imposing doom presence of Darth Vader, or just the what the hell is happening kind of presence of Darth Maul. Of, you know, if the first time you see that and he lights up the one lightsaber, and you're like, cool, yeah, red lightsaber, cool. And then the other side lights up, and John Williams completely off
That's
the
it.
rails, right? And the whole world just lights on fire, and you're just like, what's happening right now? So I love that presence factor of it. So this is a fun topic, man. We might have to revisit this, Jelly.
I know, I hear you. Most
and
stuff, yeah.
Infinite, if you would like to come back and revisit this or any other topic, you
I'd
are
love
more than
to.
welcome. This has
Yeah.
been a
You
blast.
got that right. Yeah, good times. You
Yeah.
got
That
it.
was awesome.
Let's wrap up again. Just remind people where they can find you, and once again, just thank you so much for coming on and joining us.
Yeah, no. Well, I want to thank you guys again for putting me on here. It means a lot, especially like I said, as a new channel. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter at SW Infinite with 2 E's, and then at Star Wars Infinite for Spotify podcasts and YouTube. I try to post a couple times each week on my YouTube and Spotify. So yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, give
Awesome.
them a follow.
Yeah.
The links will be in the show notes if you didn't get that. So make sure you follow, and we'll be posting stuff through our Twitter as well. And Charlie, do you wanna tell people about where they can find us?
I will, and then hopefully, you'll be hearing an automated voice giving this information next time. But for right now, I'm gonna say, as always, friends, thank you for joining us. We are a part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. You are listening to, of course, the Holocron Chronicles bi-weekly, talking about Star Wars. The co-op mode is on the opposite week, talking about video games. Code 47 comes out every Monday, talking about Star Trek. That is myself and my partners, Rich and Aaron. And every Friday since 2014, the original recipe, Secret Friends Unite podcast, Hot Extra, and myself, your original guide to the geek side. All of our podcasts can be found over on our brand spanking new website, secretfriendsunite.com. Home to all of those, home to a lot of great original content as well. All of our podcasts are, of course, available on the podcasting hosting service of your choice, whether that be the Apple Podcast, whether that be Stitcher, whether that be Audible, whether that be the Google Play Store, etc.
Spotify.
Jump on there. Yeah, Spotify, thank you. Jump on there, give us a rating, give us commentary, and we will talk about that on the show. You can find us over on Twitter at SecretFriendsU. Drop us a line, something you're enjoying on any topic, and we will talk about that on the show where it fits the bill. Of course, we have a great store over on TeePublic. By the time you listen to this, there actually will be a great sale going on. You can get yourself a wonderful t-shirt just like this. You can get this same logo plus all of our other swag on t-shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, tank tops, magnets, stickers. It's all there. All those proceeds do actually go back to supporting the program and our efforts to bring you great stuff. So one last time, thank you for joining us. I'm going to tell you, as always, that sharing is caring, and to keep on trucking.
May the force be with you. Rex, play us out.